Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 20. We're glad to have you here. We're going to be talking about DAOs on today's episode, featuring Rami and Sleiman from the Dream Conduit, a really interesting DAO that I am happy to be a part of and taking part in as well. And we'll be getting into really interesting conversations about decentralized autonomous organizations. Welcome, Rami and Sleiman. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So we'll start with a brief introduction about what I think the DAOs are about. But before I get into that, I want to thank our sponsor for today's episode, Iskra, a Web3 gaming platform. We at Web3 Warriors know that gamers are not typically compensated for the value that we create as a community. But at Iskra, you have both gamers and developers being rewarded for participating in really fun and exciting Web3 next-gen games that are actually sustainable and enjoyable. So you can play and earn. You can sign up to join their Discord at pioneer.iskra.world to check it out. Thanks to our sponsors. So for the topic of today, decentralized autonomous organizations are really a massive kind of new space, well, relatively new at least, that are made possible by smart contracts on the blockchain and really being able to organize in this new decentralized way through the blockchain that has international implications, has all kinds of multifaceted angles. So I'm going to try to give a really brief kind of definition of how I view decentralized autonomous organizations and what they kind of benefit society and specifically people that are building in Web3 and how they can kind of show a way towards a really interesting future. So decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs, are essentially organizations that are built on the blockchain and purposely decentralized in structure, which is to say kind of run by their members. So they're run by votes. It's a very democratic kind of structure. The goal is to have no specific leader or group of leaders that can break down the organization, hence it being decentralized and not in any one group's hands. And also autonomous, which means that you have quite a flexible kind of range of things you can focus on and ways to work within the organization without being really handicapped or having difficulties. Too much centralized power kind of trying to define what should be done, or maybe profit motives get in the way, or whatever the case may be. But with decentralized organizations that are on the blockchain, ideally all of their kind of processes are actually built into a smart contract that are automated as much as possible. Of course, you still always have kind of humans being humans, and there's always the potential for errors and for issues to come up. And it's also a very new space. So as these decentralized organizations are being built, we see some that kind of go by the wayside and become kind of ineffective or inactive. And then we see others that kind of really grow into some really interesting and big organizations. Like, for example, the Ethereum naming service is one that comes up to me, which is ENS, which is all these .eth addresses that you might see around when you're looking on Twitter or you're just paying attention to the NFT communities. So, for example, we at Web3 Warriors own Web3Warriors.eth. And with that, it's you get membership as .eth. As buying a .eth, you actually get membership in their DAO, and you can delegate the vote to another member, or you can use yourself as a member of their DAO holding an ENS token to kind of have your voice in their organization. But it's a very massive organization. But so that's just one example. And there's also NFT projects, for example, the Bored Apes with their Ape Coin and the community they're trying to build out from the holders of Bored Apes. They're trying to build a DAO eventually. I don't think they're quite there yet with the Ape Coin and their kind of grand vision for the metaverse. So this is just an example of kind of the main goal of a decentralized autonomous organization is to allow kind of these communities that are building and growing on the blockchain to actually function in a new way that's not kind of hindered by a lot of the old kind of power dynamics that exist in maybe a typical corporate structure or even a more typical nonprofit structure in some cases, where they have a founder role, for example, that kind of holds centralized power over the organization. So I could go on about my thoughts on this, and I'm sure some of them might be a little bit off. So we have Rami and Sleiman here, who are much more adept in this space and have spent a lot of time reading the regulations that currently exist, which are mostly in America. But that's another angle of the DAO. It's a very international in scope kind of organizational structure. So it's interesting to see how America and certain regions are trying to regulate DAOs. So with that, hopefully that definition was not too long-winded and helped you get a kind of brief understanding of what this DAO structure is, the decentralized autonomous organization. Specifically at the Dream Conduit, this is an organization focused on actually helping people who are wanting to get into Web3, wanting to get into NFTs, creatives who see other artists finding success in the space, but just don't really know how to get their footing in the space. The Dream Conduit offers conduit rooms 6 out of 7 days a week on Clubhouse. We're trying to get into Twitter as well, that really just offer a space for anybody who has experience in Web3 or no experience at all to kind of come in, ask their questions, and join a community that will then push them forward and help them find success and find a good avenue for them to share their art and creativities on the blockchain. So this is a really cool organization, and they're also the first organization to get full 501c3 accreditation from the American government, which is a big step forward for the kind of legal entity regulatory side of DAOs and that conversation. So Rami and Sleiman, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's a really cool conversation. I think you guys are, we as a DAO at the Dream Conduit are really kind of building out history here. And I think that it's exciting to think about where DAOs are going in general and where the Dream Conduit may be even just a year from now. So thanks, Rami and Sleiman. Maybe before we get into the Dream Conduit specifically, each of you could just kind of share a little bit of background, what's your real world industry background, and then how you ended up in Web3 and the blockchain. So maybe we'll start with you, Sleiman, if you don't mind. Just share a little bit of background and what brought you to the blockchain, and then we'll go to Rami. Thanks.
Of course. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having us, David. I'm really excited to be here. A little bit about myself. My name is Sleiman. I'm 25. I'm from Lebanon, and I currently live in Frankfurt, where I'm doing my master's in finance. Now, what brought me to Web3 was essentially crypto, because that was my way in. I've been in crypto for about 5 years. And well, NFTs more recently, a year and a half, I'd say, almost. At the Dream Conduit, I serve on the board of directors, and I'm also the treasurer. So what brought me to Web3 was, again, my involvement with crypto, which I came across when I was doing my bachelor's back in Beirut. Now, at the time, I was I didn't have much, I didn't have means to invest in crypto at the time. Bitcoin was on its way up to the first bull run, where it got to 20,000. So there was a lot of hype, and Bitcoin was the main crypto, the cryptocurrency in focus at the time. But years went by. I ended up, graduating from there, and I worked in Beirut for a couple of years as an accountant. And during that period of time was when the economic situation in Lebanon, you may or may have not heard of, that's when it started. The economic situation started to deteriorate. And so at the time I was working, obviously, and I had invested some, money in crypto, in Bitcoin, namely. And as the economic situation started to deteriorate even more, inflation levels reaching up to 2,000%, and beyond that, more people started to flock to crypto and started to see that, this is actually a better store of value than fiat, which, central bank can just keep printing more and more of. So that was essentially my way in. When I first heard about NFTs, I had already been very involved in crypto, and so the technology was really, it wasn't very difficult for me to see the potential that this technology had. But also, while doing our research, Rami and I actually, we started on this journey together, the NFT journey together. We realized that, we want to be part of this kind of ecosystem and we want to help with something, but neither of us are artists. And so, we wanted to make it into like the NFT space or the Web3 space in one way or another. And we figured that, the best way to do so would be by helping onboard people. I was in Lebanon at the time, and around me were a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I knew, a lot of talented artists, a lot of talented people, which didn't know much about NFTs or crypto even, at the time. And so the initial idea was maybe we could help bridge this gap, because even when I was in Lebanon, it wasn't very easy for me to buy cryptocurrency, and that's a prerequisite for you to get into the NFT space. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first kind of problem that we kind of saw and felt like this is something that this is a gap that we can bridge. This is something we can connect these people, this talent, to this world of possibilities. And like our entry into the space has always been from like the door that's like, we want to help people and we want to help onboard people. And eventually it grew into like, I guess we'll get to that story, the bit nifty to the Dream Conduit story, but I just don't want to ramble on too much. But yeah,
no, I love it. It's really exciting, and it's cool because being in the space myself, I probably bought my first cryptocurrency like 5 years ago, but did I actually take it seriously and understand the technology? Like, not at all. And I sold it when it went up, and I was like, yay, I made $100 or something, without really thinking fully about the gravity of what I was working with. Maybe I could have held that and who knows what I'd be sitting on now. But that's cool. So you came into the space with pretty good knowledge about crypto, and knowing what to do and what not to do. And sorry, so you're joining us from Oman, is it? But you were in Lebanon at the time when you started?
Right. I was in Lebanon at the time when I started. I was doing my bachelor's. I'm in Oman right now on vacation, but cool. I'm currently located. I live in Frankfurt.
No doubt. Very international team, no doubt. Yeah, I'm just really interested on that side of like the idea that Bitcoin was a really good hedge for you during an economic crisis. I think that's a really cool point to kind of focus on, and the fact that I guess it came through and helped you during that time, and now you turn around and wanting to use kind of your crypto knowledge to help others. So that's awesome. But yeah, Rami, maybe a little bit of your onboarding into Web3 story before we ask more questions about BitNifty, because I am curious, and then the evolution to the Dream Conduit. So welcome, Rami.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So I have a less interesting story, but I became aware of cryptocurrency only because Sleiman himself was buying cryptocurrency. And he kept telling me to buy some Bitcoin, and I had known about cryptocurrency since I was in college. It had a much worse reputation then than it did right now. So I never really peered too deeply into the technology, to my deep regret. But this error was made again when Sleiman started buying cryptocurrency, and he kept telling me that he kept buying Bitcoin and that I should do the same. I decided instead I would buy stocks. And when COVID hit, figuring out the stock market and investing in stocks, I bought Sony as my first stock. If I just stuck with that, things would probably been okay. But I stuck to my guns for a long time. I invested about 1.5 years in the stock market. And then in November of 2020, Sleiman convinced me to buy some Bitcoin. So I bought 1% of Bitcoin. And then it was really, it's a strange story. Like, I didn't even look into it at all. I really just bought the Bitcoin so that Sleiman would leave me alone and stop telling me to buy some. And I got it. I never really looked into it afterwards. Then one day I just get a random text from an old, really good friend who I haven't spoken to in like 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And he said, yeah, just a cryptic text, like 3-4 words. He's like, look into Ethereum. And it's like a cryptic text from like a really good friend I knew from 5 years ago, still held in very high regard. So I did. I looked at Ethereum, and it was crazy. Like, the technology and the possibilities. And that's when, I told Stevan, I'm like, have you heard about this NFT thing? About a few weeks after that, diving into the Ethereum ecosystem. And yeah, that's when we
So what was the
started.
month and year? What was the month and year there when you're diving in?
I first started looking into Ethereum. That was probably like end of January, February, and probably like late February, early March is when we started looking into
Of
NFTs.
21, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Mhm.
That's exciting,
Mhm.
man. So Ethereum, like when you just read the white paper basically, and it clicked. Like you kind of saw like the practicality of smart contracts and the vision, or
Not even, not
uh,
even. I started just reading some articles and seeing, okay, like what are smart contracts? And when I learned that they are just code, a program that anybody can write for whatever purpose and put it on the blockchain, I started to think, okay, maybe there's, that sounds like it could have some possibilities there. And then, my interest was cemented when I watched a couple of Vitalik interviews and saw just what his, mindset and his ethics were like. And um, yeah,
I
um,
love it. Vitalik Buterin he can
yeah.
inspire some people
Mhm.
for sure. It's a young genius right there, a young Canadian genius. I like to say
Mhm.
as a fellow Canadian. Yeah, no,
Yes.
it's that's cool. I dig that too. I've watched a few of his videos and read some of his posts, and it's easy to just get into his mindset. I do think he is a little bit idealist, but that's good. You need to be idealist to
Yeah.
be a true visionary, I think. So yeah, that's great, man. All right, so you guys both kind of saw the potential in the crypto space, and then early 2021, you see the potential in NFTs. And I know Rami, you're jumping into those clubhouse rooms around the same time I was early last year, and just seeing the inspiring stories of people having their lives changed, and really the impact of selling their art on the blockchain having real world benefits for them, and having that international scope, right? So maybe tell us a little bit about BitNifty and what that was about. I think it was kind of born out of maybe those rooms, right? And seeing some of these artists who wanted to get into NFTs, but the price was a hurdle, or getting crypto initially was a hurdle. Yeah, share a little bit about that.
Um, we actually came up with BitNifty before we ever got on
Oh,
Clubhouse.
nice.
Yeah, so Clubhouse came later. Sleiman, do you want to talk about how BitNifty came about?
Yeah, sure. Um, so, like I said, it's because I lived in Lebanon at the time, and I had interest in the NFT space, and I was doing my research, and Rami and I are like, by the way, in that period of time, like every few days, it was either Rami or I, like we talk to each other and be like, yo, what do you think of this idea in the NFT space? And then we'd be like, nah, like we'd sink a few holes in it, and they were like, nah, move on to the next one. So like we were really trying to like think of a solution, something that would get us in, having absolutely no artistic talent. Otherwise, like we would have just been, we would have tried to make it as artists or something.
Nice.
Uh, but but so the main issue was, myself, like I wasn't able to get cryptocurrency to participate or to buy NFTs or to mint NFTs or to do anything, right? And so um, I figured that just like how I'm unable to do that because of my geographic location and because of the capital controls imposed by the central bank and the withdrawal limits and all
Mm.
these barriers to entry, being a Lebanese citizen in Lebanon, I figured that all this talent that is in Lebanon and in other places where inflation is rampant. But although I admit when we first started, we were kind of focused on the region because we didn't know much. I didn't know much of like what was happening outside. I didn't think there would be much barriers to entry outside of Lebanon, um, at
Mm.
least to the scale that it turned out to be.
Right.
So um, so the idea for BitNifty simply was just um, I knew a bunch of people that were like, I think are talented, and I wanted to get them into the NFT space. And you know Rami and I got together and we spoke about this idea, and we thought we could bridge that gap and help mint NFTs for artists that are living in areas where cryptocurrencies are restricted or banned, or maybe even artists that don't have the means to, or just the funds to mint their first NFT. We'd kind of be that incubator in a sense, and help them get their first NFT out there. We give them a little rundown of the space, what we knew at the time, which was very limited in hindsight, and yeah, just introduce them to the people that we had met on Clubhouse at the time, kind of like a drop party introduction type thing. So we kind of came up with this structure, right? Like we created a Discord, we created a Twitter channel, a Twitter page, and an Instagram page, and we started reaching out to people. It started with the people that I knew, like some artists that I knew, and that was the first artist that we minted for. Cynthia is a good friend of mine. So that was like the first artist that we started with, and then from that, other people started joining the Discord, and people on Twitter started talking to us and hitting us up. And slowly after, like, we realized that it's not just Lebanon that's
right.
It's not people in Lebanon that are facing these restrictions. You've got places like Egypt, like Zimbabwe, like Syria, like Palestine, like all these places. Not even like, and I know I mentioned just a bunch of countries in like kind of the same region, but it goes beyond that, really. And so
well, even India, I know for a bit there they were trying to crack down on them, but India is so massive they never could. Not to mention like how many developers come out of India. It's kind of silly, but
yeah, exactly. I mean, each kind of each government, each country has its own reasons. Some of them like to blame crypto for the economic situations that are happening in their countries, kind of like Lebanon, like Turkey. Others just are they're just banning it for whatever.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's how it started. Like that's how BitNifty started. And
so that first artist, when would that have been then, where you supported that first artist to mint their work through BitNifty?
That was in April. Like that was actually a month after we launched. So we launched I'd say end of March, if I'm not mistaken, and by end of April we had minted our first NFT as BitNifty.
That's really cool.
Yeah, we try to be consistent with it.
Yeah, you guys were consistent, and I remember in those early days hearing about that pitch and really seeing the artists that you brought in to Clubhouse after you had minted their work and featuring it. It was really impressive, and it was just inspiring to see, okay, so this is what's really possible, with blockchain. And not only, some people who maybe don't even understand blockchain or can't afford to get involved with it, and you guys were there, reaching out to them. And I can definitely see how that kind of seed essentially grew into the Dream Conduit, right? Although they are different avenues, different organizations technically, but they're definitely related in that vision, and I see like both of you, would you, either of you kind of portray yourselves as creatives on the artistic side? Like, do you either of you create NFTs, or have you built any, or were you building any at that time, or was it more just like, this is an avenue for artists and we want to help artists? Either one you can take
personally, that. I mean, when I was first experimenting, so my sister like does some art, and she does some drawings and stuff. When I was first looking into NFTs, and when I thought it was just like, oh, like any artist can come in and just mint their stuff, and they'll be set. I kind of tested with that a little bit. Just my sister's art, took like nice pictures of them and put them up on this one website that what was it called? It used to mint NFTs for free. Mintable, that's the one. And so like that was as far as I kind of tried. On the artistic side, I mean, I don't really draw or do anything like that. I'm into music. I do play a couple of instruments. I play the guitar and the piano. But until I don't compose anything really, so I'm not sure if I would, I'm not sure I fit into that.
Not yet.
Not creative. Yet. Yeah, not yet at least.
That's cool. And what are you thinking, Rami? Like what drives you as somebody? Well, are you creative first of all, and if not, what kind of inspired you to take this route?
I would not label myself as somebody creative. No. I sometimes like to write when the stars are aligned. but yeah, I wouldn't label myself a creative. No.
So then what inspires you to try to help creatives and help artists? Yeah. What was the inspiration behind, well, initially BitNifty? Well, I guess we've got that story, but I think it evolved from BitNifty into the Dream Conduit, right? And clearly you guys are both quite committed to the concept of helping artists find success on the blockchain. So I'm just curious, what was that real like seed of inspiration for you, Rami? And then if Sleiman has anything more to add.
For me, I've I've lived every year of my life in a different place. It was absolutely not a glamorous lifestyle. It was a bunch of, hellos and goodbyes. But I lived in a lot of developed nations and developing nations. So my whole thing is I always could see a disparity of opportunity between, different places in the world. And even just for myself, because I had, the great fortune to be born in the States, I have access to different opportunities than the rest of my family who were not as fortunate. So for me, this is something I thought of my entire life. It was brought to my attention in nice and not so nice ways, and it's something that bothered me, and I actually was when COVID first hit. I remember I had an idea, and it was just too ambitious, but I wanted to create a sort of job application platform where companies in like the States and Europe can hire talent in developing nations that meet their requirements and are able to work virtually. In a world of remote work, why does somebody need to be at the office? If somebody doesn't need to be at the office, why do they need to be in the same country? If they can do the same skills, it doesn't matter where they are in the world. That's where things had been moving. So I thought, well, maybe we can get people in developing nations to work at these companies because their English and their skills are literally, they match Americans. So why not hire them and have that opportunity? So but it was an ambitious, sort of undertaking, and it would have required a lot of legal considerations and stuff. But I always felt almost guilty having, like being blessed, but like in such a disproportionate way. And that's like something that always bothered me. So when NFTs came around, they really seemed like, an answer to that solution. Anybody can make an NFT and anybody can sell their work, and it's permissionless. But the only restriction is on some people the ability to buy cryptocurrency. So, if we get rid of that, then, those are some people we could help that way. So that was sort of my thought process and my sort of passion, I suppose.
So it really just comes down to getting people in maybe hard off or difficult parts of the world and access to opportunities, right?
Yeah, if you get it really is the case that if you help somebody get a job, you can change their life. But you try to be charitable and give like a donation to somebody who you see might need it. But getting somebody a job is so much more valuable than that. So it's a great way to make an impact on somebody's life,
Yeah, well, it goes back to that whole, give a man a fish or teach him how to fish, right?
Right.
No doubt. No, that's really impactful. And I definitely see that come through everything that you guys have created and what we continue to build at the Dream Conduit. It's really exciting. So yeah, you kind of touched on this. So looking at NFTs specifically, right? And so that evolution from crypto, finding out about Ethereum, seeing how Ethereum does smart contracts, and then kind of just jumping into the NFT world for that main purpose, that it is a real access to opportunities for creatives, especially those that are in places in the world where maybe the economic outlook is not too promising, or it's very difficult to really be seen and get your work sold. Now you've got a whole new market that you can kind of just jump into. And I always like to make the connection to the gaming space. And what's up to everybody watching on twitch.tv. You can always tune in live. Feel free to ask any questions. But yeah, when it comes to the gaming space, we've been having that kind of community with people around the world for, over a decade. Like I think of people I've met, through GTA Online or, Call of Duty, whatever the case may be, Rocket League. And it's a really cool, real community. Now, the thing we couldn't do in that space was actually financially support each other and do real world commerce and actually say, hey, look at this piece of art I just created, and if you wanted to buy it from me, I could just sell it to you directly on chain. So that's the revolution, and I feel like that's the real kind of new intrinsic value that I think is lost still a lot. People say, oh, well, I've always been able to sell my art and this, like technically yes, but you're not putting yourself in the shoes of these people that are in these corners of the world where maybe they couldn't just sell their art easily. And now they've got a whole new market that they can sell their art to and get the funding directly without having to haggle with a middle person or, trying to fight to be seen or get your percentage. It's all just really clean cut, direct to consumer, direct to the artist type of financing. So I love that that's what really pulled you guys in. Now, a word from our sponsors. Iskra is a Web3 gaming platform that believes the future of gaming is on the blockchain. Iskra offers a premier destination for gamers and developers to explore the thrill and opportunity that Web3 gaming alongside a vibrant and diverse community can provide. Explore a platform using a blockchain built for gaming, next-gen Web3 games, and a community system that rewards both players and developers based on their participation. Sign up today at pioneer.iskra.world and join the Discord group to get early access to the future of gaming. So looking at that and looking at, the Dream Conduit and the topic of decentralized autonomous organizations and how you guys have not only created an organization to try to help people from all over the world access this space, see the value in the Web3 and the NFT space, but actually chose to do it in a very open, transparent, and frankly time-consuming way. Why have you chosen to kind of go the decentralized autonomous organization route for the Dream Conduit? Building on that vision you had with BitNifty, you guys could have just created the Dream Conduit as a brand, been the two co-founders, and really probably made a pretty lucrative organization out of it, frankly. So why did you go this route? Maybe start with Sleiman and then we'll go to Rami.
When we first started with BitNifty and we started attending these clubhouse rooms and meeting all these people, we were met with some positive feedback, and mostly from like-minded individuals such as yourself, such as Dr. Lemni, such as Nahid, big shout out, and Liana. And we kind of got to a point with BitNifty where we thought that there's like a maximum kind of there's a cap of like how many people we can help per, like theoretically if we were to do a drop every single day as like for BitNifty artists, regardless of like whether or not that is logistically possible, because it really isn't.
No.
But even then, even if we were able to iron all of that out and potentially, hypothetically, do 365 drops every year, then we'd be limited to helping 365 people a year, which we thought was, great for, at least in the first couple of months when we were like, thinking about all that. But then we thought, no, like we could actually be doing much more. Like we felt like we were in a position where we had accumulated, enough kind of, not enough, never enough actually, but sufficient information to like, do more and like help more and give more. And the reason we went for the non-profit and DAO route is because, I mean, that's just who we are. I think as people mainly, like we wanted to be transparent. We didn't want to. We did see some bad examples in the space, and we actually asked a nonprofit in the space for a drop party, and then they gave us like a quote of like $1,000 or something, and then we were like, yo, like this is not right, you know, like this. And we were under the impression that this organization was helping artists and, you know, and giving them these opportunities. And so we thought when 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 we were talking about, you know, forming this nonprofit and doing this DAO, you know, it was definitely like that was one of the things that we spoke, like we wanted to be a nonprofit, like a legit nonprofit, like a proper nonprofit, and we want it to be transparent. We want, like we have nothing to hide, and really the goal is just for us to build this reputation in the space, like because that's our only way in, that's our entry into the space. And so we wanted to enter it in, like, you know, the best way possible, and to, you know, create something that is new. Because even if, like, you know, some people say that they were like a nonprofit or whatever, like we're actually doing this, you know, the best way we possibly can, to provide the most value to the most number of people.
I see it. It's being very intentional with what you're doing, and not maybe concerned overly with trying to grow the community like quickly, right? Super quickly. I think it's a very intentional kind of like grassroots. This is what we offer. Join us. And frankly, the value that's offered at the Dream Conduit. Full disclosure, I am a conduit lead, so but I have to say the value offered there is really enormous. Like it's there are people offering hundreds, thousands, a lot of money for less value, frankly, than what we offer on any given week in the Dream Conduit. So yeah, I think it's an important thing that you're intentionally trying to go the nonprofit route for the sake of getting that access to opportunity for people, without trying to, you know, have hidden costs and all the rest. So thanks, Sleiman. And what do you think, Rami? Why go the DAO route?
Well, this was a really, really exciting idea for us to entertain. Obviously, when we started BitNifty, we didn't know about, you know, DAOs much. Really, I don't even remember if there was much discussion around it then. There had been DAOs, of course, but not that we were aware of. And we learned about this only after, you know, we were doing BitNifty drops and we were part of the community and stuff. So as part of that process, we not only learned about, you know, more deeply about blockchain and NFTs and DAOs as a result, and all of these things, but we also, just like Sleiman was saying, we're able to think about how to expand the scope. I remember that exact conversation when we calculated what our maximum theoretical output would be, and we did it. We weren't very happy feeling limited, so we wanted to expand the scope. That was the idea with the Dream Conduit, to help as many people on board into the NFT space as possible. And to make it a DAO, why make anything a DAO?
Right.
We really are convinced that, you know, decentralization lends itself to longevity. Centralization leads to corruption, and it's just a natural sort of phenomenon. If it doesn't happen in, you know, a decade or a century or, you know, a few generations, eventually it's inevitable.
Power corrupts, right?
Power corrupts, absolutely, right?
That's it.
But like with a decentralized system, you have an ability to create a democracy, and democracies are the longest running form of government or organization in history. And they're not perfect, but they're as equitable as possible, ideally. And with this sort of system, with DAOs especially, like not only is it a democracy, but it's a democracy of the people that would be the most qualified to make a decision on a particular topic. So if you have, you know, tokens that you've given out to people who have participated, then these are people who have a unique perspective when they come to vote and decide on the future of the organization because they've participated, they've been on the ground level, so they have a unique insight. So you get to build a democracy of select people, not select as in, limited, but based on certain attributes. And this way you can honestly build an organization that always meets the needs of its community because it literally has to. And that's a really good way to ensure longevity. So it's all about trying to be around as long as possible and have this sort of, platform help people, hopefully long after we're gone.
Man, that was such a on point kind of reasoning for going with the DAO. I love it as far as the democracy of your community, right? And when you speak to that corruption of centralization and you see these organizations that end up failing, it's because they're putting too much on one person, right? And even right now, you look at FB, without saying their names, but I think one of the criticisms of them is that they've allowed their original founder to just be a fully centralized kind of conduit of power, and remains to be seen whether that pans out for them or not. But I think it is one of the big criticisms, and to your point, being able to actually not only get direct input through votes from your DAO members, you actually have it written into your smart contract and your kind of main, almost like a charter, right, of your organization, that you have to do certain functions based on the input from your DAO. So it is essentially guaranteeing that your organization has a democratic foundation, essentially. So how does that balance out with the fact that ultimately you do need a team of leaders, and you need to have some direction, especially if you're the type of DAO, as I believe the Dream Conduit is, that wants to grow without limitation, right? So how do you balance that need for some type of direction for a DAO with the obvious, democratic ideals of everybody having a voice and voting on it? It's for either of you. Just how do you think's the best way to balance it out, or how are you doing it at the Dream Conduit? I know the answer, but I'm asking you.
Sleiman, do you want to take this one, or?
You can go for it.
Okay. So with a DAO, DAOs are really excellent operational systems. DAOs are a really good way to get a bunch of people from around the world and get them to share their thoughts and ideas and work towards a common goal. That's great, but you still need to exist in the world that we live in, and for that you need to have a legal entity. Without a legal entity, you are susceptible to infinite, sort of issues that could take you under. Infinite liability issues, trademark issues, issues when it comes to members of the DAO and how they may be held accountable for their actions because there is no legal entity in their stead to do so. When there is no legal entity, if you're just acting on behalf of a DAO and you do something, you are held accountable because there is no legal entity. So yes, DAOs are excellent operational models, but if you want to have them in the world that we're in today, how can you do that and mitigate these sort of issues so that you do achieve that initial goal of longevity? So in terms of legal entities, there's really not that many options. There's, corporations, and then there's nonprofits. Nonprofits are technically corporations with just two differences. They do not have any stock, so they don't have any shareholders, and they are not focused on a profit motive. And so on the opposite side, you have, corporations who have those things and are very easy to set up. You can set up an LLC in the matter of a week, and, that's all it'll take you. A couple $100 and you're good. With LLCs, though, there becomes a problem if you try to adapt that to a DAO operational model. what happens if the DAO decides to do something and the shareholders decide to do the opposite thing? Who wins? It's going to be the shareholders most of the time because they, at the end of the day, own, they own everything. So how can you create a system that sort of rectifies that? Well, looking a little bit more deeply at the nonprofit structure, it could work really well because you don't have any shareholders, you have a board of directors, and if you make these directors electable and critically impeachable by the community, then you can have a really sort of democratic system. Right now, if we wanted to impeach, any members of our governments in any of the countries that we live in, we would have to go through a representative democracy where we would have to ask somebody to, get an impeachment proceeding started, and then it would have to gain party traction and all kinds of crazy things. With us, elections and impeachments are made directly by the community. So it lends itself to being a really good democratic system. There are no conflicts of interests. The board of directors, is the group of people who, as far as the legal structure goes, make the decisions. So if the DAO decides who those people are and can also participate in a lot of that decision making, then it can be a really good structure, and bring an archaic institution, which is a nonprofit, and combine it with a DAO. And also you get other benefits of not there being a primary profit motive to focus on, and also, other things like tax exemptions.
So essentially, like you were saying, between the nonprofit and the LLC, the nonprofit avenue is the only one that allows you to actually have the board of directors that is elected by the DAO also running the legal entity?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. With LLCs, you can theoretically have a board of directors, but you cannot eliminate the shareholders.
Right.
Shareholders will always be there, and it's just there's no clean solution in terms of how to deal with that. There's all likelihood that in the coming years we'll see some states allow for DAOs to be created as legal entities, but until then, we believe nonprofits fit that structure really, really well.
As LLCs, you mean?
As LLCs potentially, or maybe even as a new legal entity.
Oh, just a new legal entity. Gotcha. Its own designation. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I think I saw something. I can't remember the state now. There was one state looking at that. But what do you think on that, Sleiman? I think, is that generally the best way to kind of function as a DAO while trying to also, get tax credit and be a real entity, essentially? And I believe you guys had to remove the founder role, right, from the nonprofit organization. Maybe you want to speak on that a bit, Sleiman, in order to really emphasize that it is the DAO's votes and their board of directors that they elect that is truly running the legal entity as well.
Definitely. So to add to like what Rami was saying, with LLCs, typically the main goal is to maximize shareholder profit, right? So if a certain LLC is undertaking a certain cause, but that cause doesn't align with maximizing shareholder profit, then you have a conflict of interest, and all that jazz. Like with the DAO, you have the board of directors, which is elected by the participants, and for people to become participants and for them to be able to actively vote, we have the system in place where they have to attend a certain number of rooms, just so the people that will participate will kind of know like what we're doing and what the cause is. So we're trying to keep it as aligned in terms of like vision, and in terms of, so like even if someone in the community, someone who attends our rooms wants to make it to the board of directors, like that is completely possible, as long as the community agrees that the visions are aligned. Now, with regards to the founder role, when we were speaking with our lawyers, they mentioned that the founder role is, it's got like this veto power, right? So even if we are decentralized, the one founder could decide to do whatever he or she wants, regardless of what the DAO what the DAO decides, or what the people vote for. And beyond that, it's not it's like passed on, I think, to like uh, your siblings first or
Next
something
of
like that.
kin
So
or
it's like,
something like that.
yeah, something like that, you know. So that obviously doesn't, like, it doesn't work with, it doesn't fit in with our plan for longevity, and even like beyond. Like, this isn't, like, we are the co-founders and stuff, but like this really isn't about us and about us, you know, being the, you know, at the helm or anything. Like, we really want to make it a point, like, for the Dream Conduit to go beyond us, like, and even the current team. And you know, we want it to be something that's continuous, and something that keeps on giving, and something that keeps on providing for artists and other individuals around the world, whether they want to, you know, make it into the NFT space, or whether they want to learn about crypto, or they want to learn a new skill. And you know, we're expanding, and ideas, I mean, you know, David, like how many
Mm.
ideas we run through, like on the weekly.
Yeah.
And you know, I say this all the time, and as cliche as this might sound, but sky really is the limit. Like, there is no limit to what we can do with this. And I believe, you know, the very well begun structure that we have come up with all together
Mm.
will really take us there.
Most definitely. I love it. Yeah, on that point about being continuous even without the current leadership, I think that speaks to another one of the strengths of a decentralized autonomous organization, right? It is essentially looking to automate its governance, right? Like through a smart contract. That's not to say you don't still need humans filling these roles and agreeing to take active participation, but the actual guiding rules, the guiding constitution, if you will, is in a smart contract that forms kind of the basis and the foundation of your organization, right? And with the Dream Conduit, I know it's based first in the white paper that we created, right? And then it goes from there kind of into the actual implementation of those rules and guidelines that we've set out in the white paper. And you spoke to kind of having the membership of the DAO based on attendance of our conduit rooms that we hold 6 out of 7 days a week. Maybe just speak a little bit more on that, because I mean, in theory, that could just keep growing forever, right? And because of that fact, I know we are on, it's Arbitrum, a layer 2 solution, or a roll-up, a ZK roll-up. Without getting too technical with our audience here, I do want to just speak to, you know, how do you see that growth happening? And like, yeah, just that notion that a good decentralized autonomous organization has their white paper and their smart contract built in such a way that it is able to just continue rolling, just like you said about good democracies, right? They don't rely on one group of people or one leadership sticking around and holding on to power. It's very much intentionally built to actually be able to turn over leadership and bring in new leaders. So yeah, either one of you, just like, how do you see that growing out, and what have you done to ensure that that is able to happen?
So yes, all of our NFTs that we give out are open-ended. They're uncapped supplies. We essentially, at the Dream Conduit, the way our DAO works is we have 2 NFTs, one set of participation NFTs, essentially. Those are called certificates, and one set of donation NFTs. And those come down to collectibles, as we call them. And to have a vote in the DAO, you need to have one of each. You need to have a participation NFT and a donation NFT, a certificate and a collectible. This way, we sort of recognize the, you know, really important things that matter to us. We need to keep the lights on, so we need funds. So the donation NFTs recognize those. The participation NFTs recognize the people who come to our rooms and act as a check and balance against those donors, so that they don't hold all the control themselves. Both of those supplies are uncapped, and we have some interesting, you know, details as to how we keep things fresh across those collections. So although they are unlimited, there is still a lot of variance and originality in terms of the artwork that's presented there. As far as future leadership goes, Myself and Sleiman, I think we're both agreed on this. I don't think we're going to, assuming we are elected by the community as directors, I don't think we'll be spending more than 2 terms at the Dream Conduit. Um, a term at the Dream Conduit is 3 years.
Hmm.
So when a member of the board becomes a member of the board, they serve for 3 years. We have set 12 as the number that needs to be on the board, so 12 directors. Each one serves 3 years. Every year, there is an election for 1/3 of the board. So 1/3 of the board is available for election every year. That is how, in 3 years, we go through all thirds, and at the end of the 3 years, each seat will have gone through an election at that point. So every year there's an election, and anybody can nominate themselves for director. They don't need to have any sort of criteria. They even legally speaking, they don't need to come from a particular country in the world or any particular place. The only real, sort of legal consideration, and it's not even a restriction, it's a consideration, is like, if this person is on, like some international terrorist lists or something.
Okay.
But that's the only case where we start to have some questions that we have to answer. But other than that, anybody can become a director at the Dream Conduit, and yeah, like literally anybody. Anybody can go through that process, and anybody can use their votes to vote for whoever they choose. And there will be elections. Yeah, every year.
So they have to be a certificate holder. I'm showing your certificates on the screen here now at stratosnft.io. So in order to be a member, the certificate, like you said, these certificates are based on your attendance in conduit rooms. Have to attend at least 3 in 1 week to get one certificate, right? And so, yeah, it's a really cool kind of system that you've built out, but I want to speak to the idea that there is some cost kind of associated with the oversight and management of DAOs. Obviously, that cost will depend on the blockchain that you're building your DAO on, right? So to that end, with the kind of that vision of growing to infinite amounts, like you say, sky's the limit, and it's built to be not capped and really allowing the membership to grow and thrive in however many numbers as possible. Did you have to really think about the financial kind of implications of minting these certificates in a never-ending kind of cycle? And did you choose a specific blockchain, with that in mind?
We did. Do you want to take this first? Or?
Yeah, sure. So, like, one of the concepts that we were discussing is, with regards to like the whole NFT system that we've put in place, whether it's the collectibles or the certificates, is that we want them to be. I mean, at the end of the day, we're onboarding people and we're educating people, right? A lot of these people are new to the space completely. A lot of them might not even have cryptocurrency and might just be, interested or just want to know what's up. And part of the learning process is like minting your first NFT or sending your first NFT or even receiving it. And so definitely like there were many considerations for like the blockchain on which we would deploy our smart contracts. And typically we were going for, or we would have wanted to go for Ethereum because that's where the space is really, with at least at this current point in time, and with the gas fees and the network congestion on Ethereum, and just how volatile that whole thing is too. It just wasn't feasible. It didn't make sense for us to deploy our smart contracts on the Ethereum network. And so we looked into other more cost efficient networks, and we initially were going for Polygon, but then we ended up going with Arbitrum, as you may know, and maybe Ram, you can speak more about that.
Sure. Yeah. So that's interesting. Polygon is a popular one in the space as far as an avenue, a layer 2, as they call it, built on Ethereum, but without all of the gas fees associated with it. But we decided to go with Arbitrum. And yeah, Rami, maybe speak a little bit to what Arbitrum is as a Ethereum related solution, and then why we decided to go that way instead of Polygon.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great question. So Arbitrum is a layer 2 solution for Ethereum. So let me just back up a little bit. Ethereum is the sort of main smart contract network where a lot of people do a lot of their smart contract things. You have alternate networks where you can do that. They are independent blockchains, like Solana and Cardano and Algorand and a couple others, Tezos and them. Those are called alternate L1s. So each blockchain, fundamental blockchain on which you can make an NFT, is called a layer 1 solution. And then layer 2 solutions are sort of built on top of that to increase transaction speed and reduce transaction costs. And so that's what a layer 2 is. It's something that does that. There's different ways that you can achieve that goal. Polygon is one way of achieving that goal. It is a side chain. And a side chain has its own set of validators, and it has its own security protocol. So it doesn't inherit security from Ethereum. Ethereum is known for its security and its decentralization. It is just not very scalable yet, so that's where the layer 2s come in. But if you're going to go to a layer 2 for scalability, you really don't want to be compromising on those other two values too much, ideally.
Exactly.
Which you do, unfortunately, when you go on Polygon. You get a lot of scalability, but you lose security and you lose a lot of decentralization.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you need most of the Polygon validators to be honest. The majority of them need to be honest most of the time for no mischievous actions to be happening. And then those validators are held in very centralized control by the Polygon Foundation, and they can make decisions to the protocol, like adding a 30-way tax to all transactions because there's too many transactions, like they did back in December. So they have a lot of centralized control. They don't inherit the security. They make a lot of compromises. Roll-ups are a newer, they're not newer as a concept. They're newer as an implementation. They're a different type of layer 2 technology. And they have, they're different. They don't have like a separate blockchain that they have to worry about. And they still deliver the scalability benefits that you're looking for in a layer 2. But they, inherit all of the security from the layer 1. So they're literally as secure as the layer 1 that they are built upon. There's no additional security requirements, considerations, or limitations. They're as secure as the layer 1,
Nice.
which is really good. And they have far more potential to be decentralized than a side chain. And this boils down to how they're validated. For rollups, I'll try to explain this briefly without too much unnecessary detail.
Appreciate you.
There's two types of rollups, ZK rollups and optimistic rollups. ZK rollups are the more complex one. They use mathematical proofs to 100% assure that something is true. So what they basically do, what rollups do essentially, is they take a bunch of transactions, then they bundle them together, they roll them up, and then they send them as one batch to the Ethereum network. So they vary in terms of how they do this. ZK rollups, they bundle the transactions, and then they look at this bundle, and then they get a mathematical proof proving that this bundle is what this bundle is. And this mathematical proof is much lighter. It has much less data than what it's actually proving.
Gotcha.
When you submit that to the blockchain, it's much less space. And it's 100% verifiable. It's based on mathematical cryptography. That's how it works. Those are far more complicated and have honestly a different set of applications than optimistic rollups do. Optimistic rollups are different. The way they work is they have transactions that are submitted, and they have people that are reviewing those transactions. They're called validators, but they're different than inside chains. Inside chains, like we said, we need the majority to be honest, and the Polygon Foundation chooses who those people are at the end of the day. With optimistic rollups, you need a single actor to be honest and report any sort of bad things that happen. If one honest actor exists among a group of 1 million validators and 999,000 of them are dishonest and one of them is honest, then the integrity is sort of assured. So it requires one honest validator instead of a majority of honest validators like sidechains do.
I guess that's why it's called Optimist.
Exactly.
Interesting.
That's exactly.
That's really cool. So the Arbitrum is a ZK rollup solution, right?
It's an optimistic.
It is an optimist. Okay, cool. Very cool.
There are no ZK rollups on which you can build smart contracts yet.
Right. Okay. So only optimistic rollups can do smart contracts, and thereby NFTs.
Yeah, exactly. Optimism and Arbitrum are the only two.
Optimism, Arbitrum. Awesome.
And there's just one more detail I wanted to add to what Sleiman was saying as to why we would build on a layer 2 in the first place. We aren't just trying to save costs for things that we're doing. We actually sponsor gas fees for everything that people do with our NFTs. So any transfers or anything that you're trying to do with our NFTs, we sponsor the gas fees for that.
Gotcha.
And we do that to improve the user experience. Again, at the end of the day, if you have to buy some cryptocurrency just so that you can make an NFT on a layer 2 solution, it's just a ridiculous set of steps that you have to go through if you haven't done that before.
Yeah, especially if you've never done it before. Yeah.
Exactly. It's so much. So we sponsor all of the gas fees for everything to do with our NFTs. We have a little bit of a game mechanic behind our donation NFTs. So it starts to really matter, the fact that we pay for gas fees for everyone. So it doesn't make sense to do that on Ethereum. But, by being on a roll-up, we make very few compromises and we can still offer that user experience.
And you share the decentralization and security of Ethereum network. And all of the Arbitrum currency is basically ETH Arbitrum, right? So it's pegged to Ethereum, right? So it's for practical reasons, is very much an Ethereum-based DAO, but in application and smart contract, it is on Arbitrum for the reasons you've stated so nicely. Anybody looking to build a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, you've got a wealth of knowledge here on this episode. I hope you're taking notes. It's really cool. Thank you so much, Rami and Sleiman. I know we've gone over the hour mark here. I do want to give anyone in the chat an opportunity. It's your last chance if you have any questions for either Rami or Sleiman. But I do want to ask kind of our closing question we ask all our guests, and I think you guys probably answer this question on a weekly or daily basis. But looking at, the Web3 space, the NFT space, as you've talked about, having this access to opportunities, especially for people in certain corners of the world where that was really, really difficult before. What do you say to those people that just aren't sure? What do you say to the people that are buying into the FUD, as we call it, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt? Maybe starting with Sleiman first, and then we'll go to Rami. What do you say to encourage those who are kind of looking at Web3 but are still hesitant for whatever reason?
I think, well, I mean, I personally I won't say that I have seen it, because I was like probably 7 or 8 when the .com bubble happened. But if you look through, like, what happened around that time and what's happening now, it's basically at its core, what it is just this revolutionary technology that helps in so many different like areas and aspects. It just so happens to be that one of them is, at this point at least, like when it comes to NFTs, like you're thinking about art, but really the idea of NFTs is a lot more. It goes a lot deeper than just art. It's like a digital database, that is impenetrable, unhackable. It's got all these qualities, right? All these beautiful qualities. I think there's much more to it than just you know NFTs and art, and I think we will see more and more people flock to Web3 and to crypto. I mean, we're already seeing it. Like many corporations are now accepting crypto. It's only a matter of time before I mean, like Coachella recently also released NFT tickets. People are
Nice.
starting to slowly, realize that there is something there. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely an opportunity for anyone that isn't really certain, or they feel like this is like a scam. I'd say you don't have to really invest any money in it. Just do your research, give it a try. You might really get inspired. You might really get inspired by something.
Exactly, like we did, right? And you got to join the
Mhm,
Dream Conduit.
absolutely.
You visit Dream
And you got to
Conduit,
join the Dream Conduit for sure.
dreamconduit.org. You can check out the schedule and drop into one of our clubhouse rooms. But yeah, definitely, I love it. Thanks, Sleiman. And what do you think, Rami? What do you say to the doubters?
I would say I know how you feel. I was that doubter, and I missed out on a lot of opportunities as a result of being a doubter. Um, I I see all the stigma that's associated with NFTs and cryptocurrency, and I would just really ask people to suspend your disbelief for just a moment, and come in with an open mind and see why people are actually in this space. Not the people that are not the degens, so to speak, but the actual builders and the artists that are around here. Talk to them and see where their passions lie, why they think this is such a massive and innovative space, why they continue to spend hours and hours of their days on conversations with people who just seem to understand. It's a really special atmosphere, and I have not seen it anywhere else. And I don't think like I treasure it. Like it's a truly magical thing to be experiencing, just the levels of technology and things that people are building and ideas that people are coming up with. Just all of the people that I've seen in NFTs right now are, some of the smartest people in each of their fields. And they have come from that into the NFT space and now have incredible ideas on what the technology can do. Um, I, I, the tech has incredible possibilities, regardless of what you think about the collectibles projects and the ridiculous prices of some of these NFTs and the gas fees. Um, Set aside that disbelief for just a moment and see what people are actually here for. And I think you might find it special too.
I love it. I love it, Rami.
And if I may add, sorry to cut you off there, but I feel like there's an important distinction to make. Like when it comes to the type of people, not the type of people, but the people, like how they enter the space or how they get to hear about the space. Because I mean, the people that come into the space because their friend told them that they flipped something within 2 days
Mhm.
and 20x profit, like it's definitely not going to sit very well with them. Like they're definitely going to think there's something sketchy or fishy going on. And it really matters just how they get on board into the space. Because if that's your introduction into the space, this monkey picture that's worth $300,000, you're going
Right.
to be like, there's something that's like doesn't
A
sit
little
well with me.
off-putting. It's a
But
little off-putting.
yeah, exactly. And so that's why it's important to like um even for us as the Dream Conduit, like we kind of have a responsibility as to how we onboard people into the space, and
Most
really
definitely.
teaching them about the ethos of the space and about what this whole community is all about.
That's just it. And that's why we're hosting this Web3 Warriors podcast every week as well. We purposely are not about, going to the moon and making a whole bunch of money. So I thank you for emphasizing that, Rami and Sleiman. It's been an amazing conversation. I'm sure we could talk DAOs all day. On the topic of other Web3 content besides artwork, I also want to thank our sponsors, Iskra, the Web3 gaming platform, where gamers and developers are being rewarded based on their participation in next-gen Web3 gaming that is both entertaining and sustainable. So you can play and earn. Join the Discord at pioneer.iskra.world. And with that, I want to thank Rami and Sleiman so much. And until next week, we will catch you in the metaverse. Peace out.